They called me useless in court. Then, the judge read my documents aloud. Monica Reyes's fingers trembled as she held the creased door handle of the family court, the aged wood cool beneath her touch. The late morning sun stretched long shadows across the cracked sidewalk, but inside this courthouse, warmth was few and far between. Every echo off the high ceilings seemed to amplify the pounding of her heart. She adjusted the worn cardigan over her thin frame. Her jeans rolled at the cuffs, shoes scuffed from countless hours at the diner and cleaning jobs. The smell of stale coffee and paper dust filled the air. People glanced at her, the woman with the thick accent and tired eyes. A quiet outsider in a town where appearances spoke louder than words. She clutched a stack of papers close, held together with a frayed rubber band, the edges dog-eared from all the nights she'd pored over legal forms she barely understood. Each page was carefully handwritten, notes she'd painstakingly organized between work shifts and bedtime stories with Leo, her 8-year-old son. She was doing this alone, not because she wanted to, but because she had to. The courtroom buzzed with whispered conversations as she took her timid steps forward. Faces she didn't recognize turned toward her, some with curiosity, others with thinly veiled judgment. Her ex-husband's lawyer, a sharp suit and sharper smirk, sat confidently at the front, fingers steepled like a predator awaiting the hunt. "Ms. Reyes?" The bailiff's voice cut through the murmurs. The judge's bench loomed ahead, an imposing silhouette framing the man who would decide her future. A brief nod, the judge's eyes flicked down, already unimpressed by the lack of an attorney. As the proceedings began, the lawyer wasted no time. With a scoff, he reached for Monica's documents. His voice was cold, edged with derision. "These?" He waved the papers with theatrical disdain. "Incoherent, handwritten notes that belong in the trash, not this court." Laughter smoldered in the room's corners. Monica's cheeks flamed bright, as if a spotlight had settled on her every imperfection. Her throat tightened. The words stung, not just because they were true in society's harsh eyes, but because they mocked her very efforts, her tireless nights, her sacrifices. She opened her mouth to speak. But the lawyer's smirk deepened, the judge's gaze briefly flickering over in mildly bored dismissal. Monica swallowed past the lump. Every eye in the courtroom felt like a cold judgment, like she was a small boat lost in a stormy sea of skepticism. The tie between her and her son, the countless meals cooked, homework overseen, tears wiped away, they might as well have been invisible. Leo's small hand brushed hers lightly from the gallery, the only warmth she could feel without breaking under scrutiny. She squeezed the papers tighter, afraid that if she loosened her grip, everything she'd fought for might scatter like loose leaves in the wind. Her voice came out a fragile whisper. "I just want what's best for Leo." But in that courtroom, in that moment, the words sounded like empty echoes against a wall of doubt. The anticipation hung heavy. The judge's gavel silent but poised. Monica knew this was only the beginning. The path ahead was uncertain, the stakes painfully clear. Holding back tears, she steadied her breath. For Leo, for herself, she had to endure this day, even as the world quietly called her useless. The courtroom's stale air felt heavier now, charged with a tension that prickled Monica's skin like static. The attorney, tall and impeccably dressed in his charcoal suit and polished tie, leaned forward, voice sharp and clipped as he began his tirade. "A woman like her," he said, eyes glinting with condescension, "without a lawyer, should hardly be allowed to hold these papers, much less understand the complexities they contain." His words spilled over the room like a dark wave, the thinly veiled insult cutting deeper than the accusations themselves. Monica's hands, which had been steady moments before, started to tremble, and she felt the eyes of the judge flick over her, the faintest crease of impatience visible on his forehead. Behind the polished wood of the bench, his expression was unreadable. But the occasional sideways glance from others told her the room's mood was shifting, drawing lines between those who believed in her and those who deemed her unworthy. Her ex-husband watched from his seat, a smug smile barely restrained, eyes locked on her as if waiting for her inevitable collapse. Heat rose to her cheeks, not just embarrassment, but the sting of being so openly dismissed. Monica swallowed hard, trying to steady her breath, but her voice arrived as a thin, wavering thread. I'm just trying to make sure Leo stays with me. I've gathered everything myself. I know what's best for him. Her thick accent wove through the sentence, and she caught a few raised eyebrows from the crowd. A murmur rippled through the courtroom, some eyes sympathetic, many skeptical, others frankly dismissive. The attorney smirked, flipping through her worn papers with exaggerated carelessness. These documents, their handwritten notes, full of errors. Incomplete at best. They don't meet any legal standards. Frankly, how can we trust a woman who couldn't even afford proper representation to present her case? His voice echoed with certainty, as if this alone settled the matter. Monica's grasp on her documents tightened, knuckles whitening beneath the faded rubber band. Her heart raced while doubt slithered in, whispering poisonous questions. Maybe they're right. Maybe I don't belong here. Yet somewhere beneath that tide of doubt, a defiant spark stayed lit. The promise she made to Leo every single day, whispered in bedtime prayers and hurried school runs. She wasn't just here to fight courtroom battles. She was here to fight for her son's future. The judge's gaze fell back on her, now sharper, impatient but not unkind. Miss Reyes, do you realize the complexity of representing yourself in court? His voice was measured, heavy with the weight of authority. The room awaited her answer, the stakes suddenly stark. The faint tapping of shoes, the rustle of papers, even the distant hum of an air vent seemed louder, a backdrop to her swirling fear and hope. Monica met the judge's eyes. Her voice steadied ever so slightly, a fragile thread of courage weaving through the nervous tremor. Yes, Your Honor, I know what's at stake. I have no one else. Her words surged through the courtroom like a ripple that no one could ignore, and though the skeptical glances remained, something else flickered. Within those simple, trembling words was a force born not of legal expertise, but of a mother's fierce love. And sometimes, that's all the courage one needs to begin the fight. As she clutched her papers tighter, the heavy silence that followed carried a quiet question. Could this woman, underestimated and unraveled by circumstance, change their minds before this day was done? The courtroom felt colder than before, the high ceilings amplifying the cold, formal air like a vast cavern. Monica stood rooted in place, clutching her worn papers, the ones she had carefully handwritten during long nights after double shifts at the cafe and cleaning jobs. She took a shaky breath and tried to speak, but the words tripped and stumbled, her voice barely above a whisper. The judge, with a barely concealed sigh, interrupted brusquely. Miss Reyes, are you certain you want to represent yourself in this matter? His tone held no warmth, just a clinical doubt that stung like a slap. Monica swallowed hard, the knot in her throat tightening. Yes, Your Honor. I don't have a lawyer, but I know what's best for Leo, she said, her voice trembling but resolute. The defense attorney's lips curled into a sneer, his eyes gleaming with triumph. I suggest the court reconsider allowing someone so clearly out of their depth to present this case, he said loudly enough for the room to catch every mocking syllable. Court proceedings are not for amateurs with handwritten scribbles. Monica's cheeks flushed crimson. She shifted nervously, her fingertips damp and knotting the papers tighter. The legal terms tossed around felt like a foreign language, cold and unyielding, designed to confuse and belittle. She reached into her folder, pulling out a photo of Leo's hospital record, his school report cards, even a letter from his teacher praising her care as a mother. She tried to explain each piece, but her nerves betrayed her. Sentences spilled out unfinished, important points skipped or poorly timed. A heavy hush fell over the courtroom. Monica's confidence cracked as the judge's gaze turned sharp, questioning her grasp on the process. Her voice wavered, the words feeling like they carried little weight against the polished rhetoric of the opposing counsel. Sitting behind the defense table, her ex's lawyer tapped a pen smugly, a predator watching prey falter, his smirk widening. Yet in the sea of doubt and cold stares, a small glimmer of hope sparked within Monica. She caught a brief, encouraging nod from a young court clerk sitting near the bench, a flicker of kindness in the otherwise stern room. That gesture was a silent reminder that not all eyes were closed to her efforts. Despite the overwhelming tide of legal jargon and the chill from unspoken judgment, Monica clung to the carefully organized, self-prepared notes, the records of what Leo needed, her sacrifices, and her quiet moments of joy. They were humble papers, but they were hers, penned with love and fierce determination. The tension thickened as the attorney sharpened his verbal blade, skewering her with pointed questions and implications of incompetence. Monica's heart pounded, each stumble feeding the courtroom's skepticism. But beneath the shaky exterior, her resolve remained. This battle wasn't just about legal points. It was about her right to stand tall for her son. And as the judge leaned back, fingers steepled, the room held its breath, watching this underestimated mother face the storm, wondering if sheer willpower could carve a path through the silence. The silence that had settled over the courtroom shattered like glass when the attorney burst into laughter, clear, confident, and cruel. Monica's hands jerked, the worn folder slipping from her grasp and tumbling to the floor. Sheets of papers fanned out in a scattered testimony of her efforts. Handwritten notes, school reports, doctor's letters, her life's work spilling like fragile promises across the polished floor. She bent quickly, cheeks burning with shame, gathering the scattered pages as whispers turned into snickers, rippling through the courtroom like a cold current. The attorney didn't stop. "Your Honor," he said with sharp disdain, his eyes never leaving Monica, "this farce has gone long enough. These filings are a blatant waste of this court's time, disorganized, unprofessional, and frankly, unusable." His words commanded attention, echoing in the high-ceilinged room. Allowing such disarray to proceed does no one any favors, especially a child who deserves stability and competence. Monica's heart pounded painfully in her chest. She dared not look toward the gallery, where Leo sat, clutching her favorite scarf, a silent anchor amid chaos. She didn't want to see the worry mirrored in his young eyes, or the shame that threatened to swallow her whole. For a moment, the strength she'd clung to felt brittle, cracking under the weight of disdain and doubt. The air seemed to press in on her, tight and suffocating. From behind his bench, the judge exhaled slowly, fingers rubbing his temple as his gaze flicked to the disordered papers resting at Monica's feet. His voice, when it came, was heavy with skepticism. "Miss Reyes, this situation is hardly ideal." He glanced at the attorney, then back to her. "The court must consider whether your filings meet the necessary standards to move forward." The room held its breath. Monica's throat felt dry as the judge's eyes reversed and landed on the top sheet of the fallen documents. The rustle of paper seemed louder than ever, almost accusing in its sound. She could feel Leo's eyes burning into her from the gallery. She wanted to promise him everything would be okay, but the trembling deep inside her spoke of uncertainty. And yet, amid the sting of humiliation and the weight of the judge's consideration, there was a sliver of something she hadn't felt before, a faint glimmer, fragile but persistent. Could these scattered pages, born of love and determination, yet unseen for their worth, hold enough truth to shift the tide? Monica's hands hovered over the papers, waiting, hoping that this moment of rock bottom might just be the beginning of a change. What would the judge's next words be? These useless documents be swept away, or finally heard? The courtroom hung poised, silent but alive with potential. Could strength be found not in polish, but in persistence? Could justice look beyond appearances? In this quiet, fragile moment, Monica braced herself for the answer. The room remained still, heavy with expectancy, as the scattered papers lay like fragile relics between Monica and the judge. There was a pause, almost suspended in time, before the judge reached forward and carefully lifted the top sheet. The courtroom hush deepened, whispers faded, eyes fixed intently on the stoic figure who now began to read. Monica stood quietly, heart pounding with a mixture of fear and fragile hope, her gaze locked on the judge's face. Underneath the stern exterior, there was a subtle shift, a furrow of curiosity creasing his brow as he absorbed the words. The notes, scrawled in Monica's careful hand, were not the haphazard mess the attorney had mocked. Instead, they told a story. Detailed records of doctor's appointments, Leo's struggles with asthma, his school achievements, and the countless sacrifices Monica had made to nurture him. The judge's voice wavered slightly as he read aloud, imbuing the pages with dignity. From the gallery's corner, a young court clerk glanced discreetly toward Monica and offered a gentle nod, a quiet lifeline in the courtroom's intimidating sea of faces. That simple gesture spoke volumes. Someone saw her, someone believed in her efforts, even if the official world hadn't yet. The attorney shifted in his seat, the confident smirk fading into a subtle crease of uncertainty as the judge's tone grew more serious. The weight of Monica's words, born out of late nights, hard work, and motherly devotion, began to pierce the armor of doubt hanging over the courtroom. The judge paused, marking a page with a clean finger, then glanced piercingly at Monica. "Miss Reyes," he said, voice steady but more engaged, "these documents you've prepared are clearer than I anticipated. The thoroughness of your records offers a much-needed perspective on your commitment." Monica's breath hitched, a hesitant surge of relief blooming within her chest. Her fingers, still clutching the edge of her jacket, relaxed slightly. For the first time in hours, the courtroom felt less like an arena and more like a space where her voice might be truly heard. Yet the battle was far from over. The attorney's eyes narrowed, his posture stiffening, as though preparing to challenge the unexpected turn. Still, the very air in the courtroom had changed. Whispers replaced by a silent acknowledgement that Monica's persistence was piercing the veil of dismissiveness. In that moment, Monica realized that these pages, inked with love and painstaking care, had become more than evidence. They were a testament to her resilience. The judge's shifting tone hinted at new possibilities, a crack in the daunting facade of prejudice, a chance for fairness. And as the judge's voice continued to echo Monica's determined words, one question lingered in the air, gentle but insistent. Could her truth finally break through the walls that had kept her underestimated for so long? The courtroom held its breath as the judge's eyes lifted from the final page of Monica's documents. His voice, steady yet filled with unmistakable warmth, began to fill the room, a voice that seemed to carry the weight of truth and empathy. Here we have a detailed account of Leo's medical needs, his educational progress, and the daily care provided by his mother. The judge's words painted a vivid picture, each phrase underscored by the gentle clarity nestled within Monica's careful handwriting. Monica's heart fluttered uncertainly, but her hands remained clasped in front of her, trembling but steady. The judge continued, now reading aloud a passage from Monica's most poignant statement, an outline of Leo's asthma attacks, the nights she'd stayed awake with him, the therapy sessions, the school awards she cherished more than anyone else. The description wasn't just a list. It was a story of love, perseverance, and the quiet sacrifices a mother makes unseen. Around the room, silence deepened, heavier with this undeniable truth. Faces in the gallery softened, eyes once indifferent now moistening, reflecting the raw, tender reality Monica had poured into those pages. The walls that seemed so resolute moments ago were now permeated by the unexpected force of a mother's devotion. The attorney, once proud and contemptuous, now sat slack-jawed, his smug mask faltering visibly. The smug expression that had dominated his features slipped away, replaced by something thinner, defeat edged with disbelief. His carefully constructed arguments appeared fragile against the undeniable evidence unfolding in the judge's voice. "Miss Reyes," the judge said gently, "what you have presented goes beyond the formalities and technicalities we often get lost in here. These documents prove your commitment, your understanding, and your love. They deserve to be acknowledged, not dismissed." Monica blinked back tears she hadn't realized were pooling, the tight knot of exhaustion and fear unraveling into fragile hope. The courtroom atmosphere shifted palpably, as if justice itself had tilted, bending toward fairness. The murmur of voices around her seemed distant now. Her gaze found Leo's in the gallery, his small, nervous smile a beacon. For the first time, she felt the weight begin to lift, the great burden of being underestimated, judged merely by her accent, her simple clothes, or the lack of a fancy lawyer. A hush fell once more as the judge's eyes locked onto the attorney. "Counselor, I would remind you that our responsibility is to the child's welfare, not to courtroom theatrics or personal disparagement." That statement echoed far beyond the wooden walls, a clear rebuke, wrapped in kindness and authority. Monica straightened, the flicker of power igniting within her chest. This was no longer just about papers or legal battles. It was about recognition of the quiet strength that had driven her all along. Could one woman's dedication, written in humble script but fueled by fierce love, undo years of dismissive glances? As the judge's voice resonated through the chamber, the answer was beginning to shine unmistakably clear. And in that moment of revelation, a fragile but fierce hope blossomed, because sometimes the most profound power lies not in privilege or polish, but in the courage to be heard. Would this be Monica's turning point, the first step toward the justice that had long been overdue? Monica took a slow, steadying breath, feeling the courtroom's weight pressing against her like a heavy fog. But this time, she stood taller. The judge had ruled her documentation admissible, and hearing those words felt like the first ray of sunlight, breaking through a long, stormy night. The small stack of papers in her hands no longer seemed fragile or scattershot. They were solid proof of her dedication, her strength, her truth. She glanced at the attorney, who had slid back in his seat, eyes narrowed and lips pressed tight in a thin line. The confidence that once oozed from him had drained, replaced by a flicker of unease. Monica could see the subtle crack in his facade, the realization that the courtroom wasn't just a place for power suits and sharp words. It was a place where clarity and care mattered. The judge's voice rang out, clear and firm. "Counselor, the court will not tolerate condescension or mockery. Just because someone lacks polish does not mean they lack merit. Our duty is to ensure justice is served, regardless of presentation." The room shifted, a collective intake of breath, and Monica felt a new energy surge through her veins. The judge's sharp rebuke was a balm to her bruised spirit, a reminder that fairness transcended appearances. Empowered now, Monica stepped forward, feeling the once intimidating courtroom transform. She found her voice, steady and resolute. "Your Honor, what I want most is to provide Leo with the love and stability he deserves. I've carried every challenge alone, but this fight is for him." Her words, clear and genuine, resonated in the still air. The judge nodded thoughtfully. The gallery, once skeptical, leaned forward, their eyes reflecting newfound respect. Her ex watched, jaws set tight, no longer smirking. And for the first time, Monica glimpsed vulnerability in his stance. The veneer of certainty dropped away, exposing the truth beneath. He had misjudged her, underestimated the depths of her commitment. As the hearing concluded, the judge made his ruling, awarding Monica primary custody of Leo. The courtroom filled with murmurs as the attorney's reputation took a visible hit. His poised demeanor faltered, a harsh lesson etched on his face about the cost of underestimating a mother's resolve. Monica's knees felt weak, but she held firm, her gaze locking with Leo's in the gallery. His small smile was her victory, his presence a testament that every sacrifice had been worth it. In that moment, the judge's words lingered, echoing in the stillness. "Justice is not reserved for the well-dressed or well-spoken. It belongs to all who seek it with humility and truth." Monica walked away from the bench, changed. No longer simply the underestimated woman in simple clothes, but a fierce protector and a symbol of resilience. The battle had been hard-fought, but her renewed strength and the justice she won would echo far beyond the courtroom walls. The heavy wooden doors of the courtroom swung open, the soft murmur of departing voices filling the space as people trickled out, leaving Monica alone with Leo. Her arms wrapped tightly around her son, who pressed his small face into her jacket, his breath warm against her cheek. Tears welled up and spilled freely down her face, not tears of defeat, but of a deep, unspoken pride. The walls that had felt so unyielding just hours ago seemed to soften now, as if bearing witness to her quiet victory. Leo's fingers curled tightly around her hand as she whispered, "We did it, baby. We're going home together." His small smile, shy but radiant, blossomed like sunlight after a storm. In that embrace, all the judgments, the sneers, and the whispered doubts melted away, replaced by an overwhelming sense of hope and belonging. Outside, the judge's parting words echoed gently in her mind. "Never judge integrity or intelligence by outward appearance." Those words weren't just a sentence. They were a lifeline, a beacon for every underestimated soul who had ever been dismissed because of their circumstances, their voice, or their past. Monica repeated them silently, feeling their truth resonate deep within her. Her journey had been hard, marked by humiliation and doubt, but it had also been a testament to resilience and love. In the unsteady script of handwritten notes and tireless nights spent working and caring, Monica had found her power. She had proven that dignity isn't measured by status or eloquence, but by the relentless spirit to do what's right. As the hallway emptied, Monica glanced back once more at the courtroom, the place where she'd been called useless, but refused to be broken. Her victory now stood as a quiet rebellion against assumptions and prejudices long held, a testament to the fact that perseverance and love could outshine credentials and privilege. Outside the courthouse, the world waited, busy and indifferent. But Monica felt different. She was no longer just the underestimated single mother. She was a symbol of strength, a reminder that every voice matters, every story deserves to be heard, and every mother's love is a force beyond measure. With Leo by her side, she stepped into the sunlight. A new chapter unfolding, full of promise, courage, and unshakable hope. Have you ever felt unseen or underestimated, only to find your quiet strength shine brightest when it's needed most? Sometimes, the most profound victories come not in applause, but in the steady heartbeat of love and perseverance. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button. See you in our next story.